Hi, my name is Cindy, and welcome to the Importance of Working All 12 Steps workshop. The co-leader today is Meg. We welcome everyone who has joined us, and we hope more will come along as we get started. Please help us open the meeting with the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, and the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Meg is going to start us off. Today we will be talking about step 12. There will be time for sharing at the end of the workshop. Meg, you have about 15 to 20 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Meg, and I'm a food and sugar addict, and I'm from Minneapolis, and I'm just happy to be here, especially before the holidays and all the food season and everything else. It's just nice to know these are my roots, these are my peeps, and this is just great. And so I just want to go over step 12 after having a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. We try to carry this message to compulsive overeaters and practice these principles in all our affairs. I will give a brief overview of me. I first came into OA when 1985, and it was April Fool's Day, believe it or not. I remember it was Monday. And I had learned about OA in an advice column in a newspaper. And I was also familiar with another 12-step program, but never knew that there was one that focused on food. I've always been addicted to food. I mean, I can go back to age 4, and all the things that I did all throughout my youth and into adulthood. So at that time, I was 27 years old. What I heard that evening, and there was about 40 people in that meeting, that white flour and sugar were addictive parts just like alcohol is to an alcoholic. Well, I got that right away. And even the fact the night before I came, I somehow knew I was going to have to give up sugar. So I ate a small bowl of brown sugar that night. I mean, my teeth still ache, and I get that weird feeling in the back of my throat, just how awful that was and is. Anyway, but it just shows, what great lengths I went to. And I think at that time, that's the only sugar I had in my house. That's really the bottom line. Anyway, at that time, I came in at 155 pounds. I had been on other diets again. I think the most I'd ever gotten up to was 165. I don't really know what that is in kilos. That might be maybe 70 or 80. Anyway, I got it right away, started working a program, but I also was working it as a diet. So I was really into bodybuilding at the time and really working to, lose the weight and all of that. So I lifted weights. I did that 6 days a week, and then I walked, and I did aerobics. And anyway, I got down to 120 pounds, which is probably 55 kilos. I stopped getting my period, so I didn't have enough fat in my body. Just really started seeing how insane that was. So I stopped all that. And, of course, everything's always cold turkey, all or nothing, all or nothing. So I still had some of the behaviors, but what I did was I just put down the food and just really started working a program. Did really fine for a couple of years. And I remember I had, times of abstinence within there. I even found some old tapes, cassette tapes. Now that might be real ancient to some of you who are on the line. They were even better than 8-track tape and reel to reel. But I had spoke at a couple of the conferences in 87 and 88. So I was really involved. And then I started dating someone, and they didn't understand my food plan. And so I started making compromises because I really wanted to fit in, and I really wanted him to like me, and, and why couldn't he understand, and all of this. And as I look back now, many years later, that was really the beginning of my fall, and the fact that I was willing to put someone else before my program. As a result, I ended up leaving Kim, which is a good thing, but I ended up leaving the program and just diving headfirst into sugar. So unfortunately, he got to see me at my worst. We parted our ways. 14 years, I ate my head off, gained and lost weight, did commercial weight loss programs, personal trainer, the whole 9 yards. Even gave up certain food groups thinking, I'm going to arrest this. And, I know OA lived in the back of my head because I was a part of it for 5 years. A person at work 12-stepped me a bit, and I came back on June 14th, 2004 at 260 pounds, 118 kilo, And I just decided to work a much different program. Really what I did is that I got more honest. And my more honest at that time was I'm not going to put a false view over how my life was in that I had it together and things were fine and so on. I really needed to be real practical and raw. I've been blessed with back-to-back abstinence. Since then, my food plan has changed over the course of years. I eat as a vegan now, and I'm down to 130 pounds, which is 59 kilo, and have been maintaining that weight for the last couple of years. I feel really good about it. Really work a much different program, a much more robust program, and I'm absolutely thrilled with that. So I am so glad to be here, and I just really want to talk about the beauty and the awesomeness of Step 12. And so this promises us that we have spiritual awakenings, provided we work these steps, and not the steps of something else or the steps of some self-help guru, whatever. It's really OA's 12 steps. It really showed me that there is a different way to live and that there is so much more joy and acceptance of who I am, and that I worry less and less about external trappings. I'm not so focused on what do I look like to someone else and so on. So apart from having now, almost 11 and a half years abstinence, that I'm down 130 pounds, so I'm basically half the size I was. But that's just the physical component because I followed my food plan and, continued to eliminate those foods that I had sensitivities to or they became triggers at some point. My main high-potency addict choices are sugar, junk food, fried food, and then artificial sweeteners. I had cholesterol that was at 230. After I was in the program for 2 years, went to a nutritionist, found out that the artificial sweeteners that I was consuming in the form of soft drinks and gum and sugar-free mints and all of that was not doing me any good. So after a year, this is where I know I'm an addict, I thought, well, if my cholesterol doesn't go down significantly, then I'm going to go back and drink my soft drink. Well, it so happened that it went down from 230 to 160 in a year. So it showed that changing my food plan was significant to my physical health and not just the weight loss, but also my sanity. So spiritual awakenings I've had, part of it I can attribute it to age, but the thing is for me to embrace my age, I'm 57, is that I'm conscious. I'm not in a food fog. I am aware of what work I need to do, and that's work in these steps, and that's admitting I'm powerless, and sometimes it's over and over again. I'm powerless over people. I'm powerless over places. I'm powerless over a lot of things. When I know and continue to reaffirm that I'm powerless over certain foods and certain food behaviors and just really turn it over, my life is just so much easier because I can't. I've tried the whole willpower and tried this and tried that, and I don't anymore. I really surrendered, and I continue to surrender. That doesn't go away. I continue to see how my life has been unmanageable. The longer I'm abstinent, the more beautiful life becomes. But I'll tell you, some of those memories come up, and I really see, holy cow, was I not in my best place? And I look back, and of course, that's when I assess my whole life. But I look at doing my inventory and telling someone else. And, even though I feel like I want to hurl when I have to tell someone those warts about me in my real life, it's just so much more freeing because I don't have to carry that around anymore and feel like I have to sneak eat. I don't ever, ever, ever want to go back to how I was with the food. And I know that my disease is still working in the background, and that if I were to start eating today, I would probably be 300 pounds in under 6 weeks. I tell myself that all the time because I don't want to ever think for 1 minute that I've got this cured because I have been away from certain foods for a certain number of years. My sanity that I've worked toward is so much more precious, and it's taken me 11 and a half years to get to where I am today. And I just can't wait what another 11 years will bring, working this program one day at a time, doing what I need to do, relying on my higher power, and then all of you. So I work my steps, I make my amends, I look at things I've done, and then I do a daily inventory. That's asked of step 10, and I continually pray and meditate and stay in touch. What I've learned in these spiritual awakenings, I mean, sometimes they're so profound I can't put words to them, and sometimes it's just a huge aha, like one example. Oh, I'm flawed. All right, I know that of everyone else, and yeah, I kind of knew that about myself, but I didn't fully accept it. I acknowledged it and I tolerated it, but I thought maybe there's still kind of some way I can kind of protect that side of me and nobody has to see it. And then all I have to do is do something, and I find myself apologizing to someone else because I was short-sighted, or a comment I made was harsh or unthinking, and so on. When I look at myself as someone in this program who's allowed to work progress rather than perfection, I am not so hard on myself. As a result, I am not so hard and judgmental of others, because that was my life. It was everyone else's fault. If everyone would just do this, my life would be fine. Of course, that's not the case. The only person that I can really focus on and change behaviors is myself. And that's what I've really focused on. That part I find is very self-focused, is what can I do, what are my next steps, and so on. But it's not, let's say, the highlight of my day. It's not the spotlight. The spotlight is, how can I be of service? How can I be of service at work? For so long at work, I felt that people were out to get me. I wasn't making enough money. I was underemploying myself. I was just downright angry. In my family, it was okay to be angry, so I was scary angry. There were times that people told me, Meg, you're scary. And I remember feeling proud of that at some point. And now it's just a humbling moment. It's a humbling moment that I've gotten from step 12. Now I wake up my mornings, instead of being resentful and angry and all of those things, I wake up with prayer and meditation. I am able to center myself for the day and really focus on, how am I supposed to be at work? How am I supposed to be with people? And when people irritate me, first and foremost, I go to myself and think, where is there unrest in me that I'm finding this situation so unbearable? Is there an action that I need to do, and why am I responding the way I am? What kind of people-pleasing do I do, and so on? So I'm not so focused anymore, and these people are awful, and why can't they get it together, and so on. Because there's a lot of people I work with who, I can't diagnose other people, but looking at, let's say, physical size, when it's extreme, and their behaviors and so on, which was a lot like mine when I was in the food, I sometimes think, maybe that person is just like me. If I'm hostile back and they find out I'm a part of this program, they're not going to want it. But if I can be grace-filled and able to be patient, or sometimes just plain keep my mouth shut, I think that I give a much better message, and I really add more serenity to the day instead of more angst on their part. So I'm thankful for this step, that I am always the message, and that even when I'm unaware, I'm still the message. Because if someone finds out or someone knows that I am, and I just try to be my best self, and that means I need to be conscious. That I need to be aware. I need to be focused on how I work this program. My abstinence is my number one responsibility. It comes before pleasing family. It comes before anyone or anything else, in that I make sure I have my food aligned, because then I can converse with my higher power. I can converse with other people and really be a part of things. And those days, sure, I'm feeling a Zen moment right now, and that's always fine and good and so on. But when I'm not having those moments and I'm getting a little wild and a little uptight, there are times I've literally taken myself on a timeout. I've been with people and I've been pretty wild and getting a little loud and getting verging on the form of hostile. And I just say, you know what, you guys, I'm just going to kind of take a little time out right now. And I'll go and walk around the block, or I'll go sit at my desk and, breathe a little bit or whatever. And I don't escalate as quickly as I have in the past, nor do I as often. And I'm glad that I am cognizant and aware enough that when I find myself getting there, I try to nip it in the bud. by using the tools of this program, and then I'm working the steps. Then I'm not having to make 800 amends every day. I can take care of that before I even cause something else. So at this point, I just want to say that I am extremely grateful for the people I've met in this program, the sponsors I've had, the sponsor I have, and all the people that I talk with. I've been a part of Region and been a part of World, and my community it's worldwide. I can Skype someone in Israel, I can Skype someone in Portland, Oregon, and New Zealand, and Missouri. We all have this disease, and we all get to kind of laugh about some of the same things we come upon, because when I tell something or I hear what someone else has to say, I just kind of chuckle sometimes, not at them, but it's like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because I experience a lot of the same thing. Some of the names are changed to protect the innocent, I would say, but otherwise, I hear my story over and over again. I also get a deeper understanding of who I am and where I've become. So I've heard people say that people in the program are like God with skin on. I heavily rely on that as well, because when I am having my moments, I'm now at a point where it's which 6 people do I know who are available, so I can go down the list, and even if it's number 6 who's able to be there and be there with me, that's great. I no longer worry about, I don't want to call anyone because I don't want to bother anyone. I know I need to, because I need to get back down on the level plane. So I'm grateful. I'm thrilled to be here, and with that, I pass.
Thank you, Meg, very much. There are a couple of announcements before we continue with the second speaker. This workshop is being recorded and will be posted on the OA website podcast page, as well as other podcast feeds like iTunes. If you speak, it is considered implied consent to have your voice and your share recorded and posted. To preserve your anonymity, please use only your first name or a fictitious name when you share. In accordance with Tradition 6 and 10, please refer only to OA-approved literature when you share. According to our 7th tradition, we are self-supporting through our own contributions. Even though this is a virtual meeting, we still have expenses for the website and uploading the podcast. Please use special workshop meeting number 82278 when making your contribution. Go to OA.org and click on Contributions, or you may send your contributions to the World Service Office, Post Office Box 44020 Rio Rancho, New Mexico, 87174. Thank you for helping us to carry the message. And I do want to remind everyone that after I speak, because I'm going to be the next speaker, then there will be some time for questions or sharing. Hi, my name is Cindy, and I'm a compulsive eater. I am from St. Louis, the St. Louis, Missouri area, and I am honored to be asked to participate in this workshop today. I will give you just a brief history of me. I've been in program 25 years. I have 15 and a half years of current abstinence, and I'm maintaining a 60-pound weight loss. I came in at just about 203 pounds, maybe a little more than that, miserable, hated myself, hated the fact that I had to wear a size 22, unable to stop eating, just unable. I would eat until I just fell asleep at the table, or I would eat, and then later with an activity that my family had, we'd play cards, and I would just fall asleep playing cards, and I would just have to dismiss myself and go in and go to bed. And it was humiliating, and yet there was nothing I could do about it, because the food just continued to be the thing I needed to get through the day. I had a good marriage. I had a nice home. I had a good job. My children were old enough. They were pretty much taking care of themselves, and I was a mess. But when I came into the program, what I learned was that I'd been trying to rely on my own competence, and I didn't have a lot of confidence in my own competence. So I needed to find that higher power who could help me figure out how to live without the food, and then as a result of that, I was able to live a totally different life. My self-esteem came back, my comfort with handling situations, like they say, that used to baffle me. You know, the only way I knew how to handle a situation when I walked in the door was to scream at it or to ignore it, to pretend like it never happened. Now I'm able to address things comfortably ask people for help, and remember that as long as I keep working the steps of the OA program, I will be able to do this because I no longer need food to act as that barrier between me and other people or to help me get through life. I do want to share one last thing, and that was when I was in relapse, I regained some of my weight, not all of it, but some of it. And after, I think it only took about a year coming back out of relapse, I got down to a weight about 170 pounds, and that was sort of my normal weight. I was unable to lose more. I just kept weighing that, and I was trying all kinds of little ideas that came to me, like an exercise program or change this about my food or change that about my food. But it took me 10 years, and I think my higher power saw that I needed to be there for 10 years until I was totally accepting that it's not a matter of what you weigh, it's a matter of who you are. Anyway, after that 10 years, I was suddenly presented with a new food plan, and at first I thought I couldn't possibly do it, and then I said, wait, you've been asking God for 10 years for a food plan, and he has suddenly given you a food plan. Just try it. It's different than what you thought your food should look like. It doesn't include some of the things that you think are, really tasty and that you really think you need. And yet it is what you're being pointed towards. So I said, okay, part of the program says I will do what my higher power tells me. So I, for one day, followed the food plan. And then for the next day, I followed that food plan. And I have to tell you that I lost another 30 pounds, and I've been maintaining that weight now for 7 years. So I like to think that I had to do it kind of on the installment program, but willingness comes as willingness comes. There was no way anyone was going to dictate to me how I ate. I had to get to the point where I wanted to do what was best for me and my person. And once I was willing to follow what the program says, one day at a time, there were things that I had thought just weren't going to happen for me. And I know that weight loss is not the most important part of the program, but what happened was I had to get to where all the other important parts of the program had taken place. And then for some reason at that point, my higher power gave me that freedom, for which I'm really grateful. So now I'm going to talk about Step 12. I happen to be studying Step 12 in one of my meetings each week. We're reading the big book, and on page 89, the chapter 7, and it's called Working with Others. Amazing, Step 12. And one of the things I love in this is a quote that happens pretty early on, and it says, life will take on new meaning, to watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot in our lives. For me, this was the most important thing about the program. Even when I came in and I was a newcomer and I had no idea what was going on around me as far as working the steps, just the feeling a part of, to be welcomed, to be contacted by people, to have people I could contact, to feel like I belonged somewhere. That was so important because I had been isolated and trying to pretend like I knew what was going on in the world, like I knew how to handle my world for so many years, that to just become one among was such a wonderful experience. And that's what Step 12 is about. It's about helping others. In return, that helps us, and then we help another person, and then that helps us, and then we help another person, and that helps us. So for me, that connection is just so important, and it is one that we must not miss. One of the things I heard this morning at a meeting I went to was you need to immerse yourself in program. At first, when we come in, we need to get a sponsor. We need to sit in the rooms and listen to what other people are doing and how they're dealing with the issues and problems around food and figuring out how to get a food plan or what works for their body. But eventually, we've learned that. Then we worked Step 4 through 9. We work those steps. And then we come out of that and we think, whoo, I'm cured. This is pretty good. But if we haven't also along the way figured out that we need to be reaching our hand out to the guy behind us, we're just going to end up in this big empty space all by ourselves. Step 12 is not optional. Nothing says, well, when you get to, rest on your laurels now that you got your weight off or now that you've worked all the steps. That's not what it says. It says now it's time to be of maximum helpfulness to others. Now that you have had this spiritual awakening, your job is to turn around and help someone else. And so in the beginning, I believe that working as a sponsor with another person is a huge thing. And I think that all of us, one of the things I hear over and over is there aren't enough sponsors. I don't get that. If I have been given recovery, if I have worked the steps, I have an obligation, as far as I'm concerned, to turn around and offer myself to another person. Now, I understand we all have busy lives, and maybe I can only sponsor 3 people, or maybe I can only sponsor temporarily, but I can always reach my hand out to someone who's struggling, who wants that help. I've been really blessed. I've been retired for a while, and so I get to help more than 3 people, and I'm really grateful for that. But even if all you do is, even if you can't sponsor someone, you take someone who's struggling and you say, let's go have coffee after the meeting. Let's go sit down and talk about what's going on with you, not what's going on with me. I had an early sponsee that told me, she said, Cindy, the time when we're supposed to be together isn't supposed to be about you, which was a shock because I thought she was there to listen to my stuff. But what I figured out, and what it says right in the big book, is that you go and listen to them. You could share your experience, if they're in a kind of a good mood, share your good experiences. If they're kind of somber, share some of your not so happy experiences. But mostly get them, draw them out, let them tell you what's happening in their life. And that support, that loving, caring listening will bring them into the circle. It will bring them into the fellowship because they will think, oh, there's someone here that cares about me. There's someone here who wants to help me. Now, we have to be cautious if that's a person that turns out to be someone who just wants to heavily rely on us. We have cautionary statements about that, but just reaching out and offering ourselves, and then if we recognize that that sort of thing is going on, we can talk to our own sponsors about ways to manage that sort of situation. We can then deal with it. But if we're not offering to help those people, if we're not offering to listen to them and to bring them in, the fellowship does not grow. If I don't have another person to help, then I'm not growing. So here we are, step 12, it's not optional. What other ways? I can sponsor people. I can. And I can go to meetings, and that's a fabulous service. I can help set the room up. I can carry the bag of literature. I can be the person who gets the speakers. I can do all of those things. And then what's after that? What keeps me here? And that's a big part of my story, and that is I then need to give service beyond sponsorship. I know that there are people who say, nope, that's all the service you ever need to give. But in my case, for me, I had to give service beyond that group level. I had to participate at the intergroup level. I volunteered to go because my meeting didn't have anybody, and they kept announcing that it was important. So I thought, well, I can go sit in a meeting. I know how to do that, a business-type meeting, and I can go do that. Oh, my gosh, I learned so many things when I went there. Not necessarily did I learn how OA works or how important all that is, but I learned how to interact with people in ways that I hadn't known before. I learned that I can go and disagree with someone and still love them and care about them and be useful to them as well as they can love and care about me, even if we're on totally different planes. I think people forget that giving service is a really important way to expand our spiritual life, because relationships are what our spiritual life is about. We have this spiritual program, and yet we want to keep ourselves so safe. Well, everything we ever wanted is just beyond our fear, just beyond our comfort zone. If all we think about in life is how comfortable we are and we're not willing to reach out beyond that, we're not going to reach out to that person that's suffering, who maybe is doing it a little different than we are, or that really needs a hand up, and we're like, ooh, I can't offer that person my hand. They're different from me. So expanding my spiritual life is what the program is about. There's a quote, page 100 in the 12 and 12, and it just says, "This being true, are we now ready to complete the 12th step and graduate from OA?" That's kind of like we've got everything together now and we're looking pretty good and life's pretty good. Looking back at how far we've come, many of us have been tempted to think we've arrived at the end of the journey. The truth learned from the experiences of thousands of OAs is that even when we've reached our goal of health, body size, or weight, even when we worked all 12 steps to the best of our ability, even when we celebrated milestone anniversaries of abstinence and recovery, even when we've been placed in a position of trust by other OA members and have rendered service on the group, intergroup, regional, and international levels, we still haven't arrived. The 12th step invites us to continue the journey one day at a time for the rest of our lives. We need to keep moving forward in recovery, to keep developing our spiritual consciousness if we are to remain spiritually awake and fully alive. The 12th step chapter in the OA 12 and 12 is where you're going to find all those principles that we talk about all the time. You know, we always say we want to live by the spiritual principles, but if you don't know where they're written down, which was my problem, because it took me a long time to find out where to find the principles. What are these principles we talk about? I'm going to read them quickly, but they start on page 103, and that is step 1 is honesty, step 2 is hope, 3 is faith, 4 and 5 are courage and integrity, 6 is willingness, 7 is humility, 8 and 9 are self-discipline and love of others, 10 is perseverance, keep on keeping on, 11 is spiritual awakening, or spiritual awareness, and the principle of step 12 is service, reaching out our hands to, gives us power and strength greater than ours. That is what step 12 is about, trusting God and then doing something to help not only a single human being, but the OA fellowship as a whole. We really, truly need to give back what we've been given so freely, and we need to do that in as many different ways as we can. And then I'm going to close with, those of us who live this program don't simply carry the message. We are the message. Each day that we live well, we are well. We embody the joy of recovery, which attracts others who want what we have found in OA. We're always happy to share our secret, the 12 steps of Overeaters Anonymous, which empower each of us to live well and be well, one day at a time. And with that, I will pass. Just as a reminder, this workshop is being recorded and will be posted on the OA Web podcast page. If you choose to speak, it is considered implied consent to have your voice and your share recorded and posted. To preserve your anonymity, please use only your first name or a fictitious name when you share. In accordance with Tradition 6 and 10, please refer to OA-approved literature, so that includes some of the AA literature, when you share. Now, we're going to have some time now for questions or sharing, and I have a question for you if you're interested in pitching or joining in. If you don't know what you want to talk about, share ways you have found that service is helpful in your life. That would be just a topic. We can listen or you can share on anything you want. So is there anyone there who would like to join in? And we're open for sharing.
Is that, Cindy? I really liked your share and the whole thing about service, because that is what really taught me to get out of my own self. I was so self-absorbed before, and if someone had told me that, I would have been highly insulted and would have thought they were out of their mind and et cetera, et cetera. But then when I saw that everything was all about me, how sad I was, how miserable I was, what a victim I was, et cetera, and when I was able to reach out to other people and help them, I get so much more out of it. I mean, that's the whole thing. That's like one of the biggest surprises. It was like, wow, who knew? So I'm thankful for that. I'll pass.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Meg from Santa Cruz, California.
Hi, Meg.
Hi. Thank you both for your shares. It was really good to hear your stories and how important Step 12 is. I know that for me, service helped me to feel part of OA. part of something rather than on the outside. Being a compulsive eater, overeater, and heavy, or, I always felt on the outside of everything, not just because of the way I ate and not just because of the way I looked, but, my mindset was that I'm different, that I'm rotten in the core, and so I don't want anybody to know me very well, and on and on. But I took on service pretty quick in the program, and it helped me to feel like I was really part of something, and I was accepted. Well, also in the meetings there was that love and acceptance you get at every meeting that kept me coming back. But another thing that kept coming me back is I took the service position, and I had to keep coming to the meeting. There were some times when one of the meetings I was secretary of, nobody showed up for a few weeks in a row, and I would stay for at least a half an hour, and I would read the literature because I had some of the things with me. And so it gave me a time to spend some time with program, even if it wasn't with somebody else. And that meeting is still going, and I'm grateful many, many, many years later. I've been in the program 26 years and maintained I'm 55 pounds less than I was before program. I maintained a healthy weight for most of that 26 years. I'm really grateful. It's a miracle. Also, doing service, I would take positions that I didn't know much about, and I would say, me? Why do you want me to come to intergroup? I don't know anything. Or me to go to World Service? What? What's that? And I would take a position, and it was very encouraging. People would say, well, come see maybe you can figure out something that you can do that's easy for you to do to be part of it. So that first time I was in intergroup, I did it for a year, and I did my position, and it was really wonderful to learn to practice these principles doing business. And it also helped me to take a position outside of OA and practice those principles. And even though the people there weren't in 12 steps, it just made it much easier to run the business meetings using the principles of the program. All along, it's really helped me. Somebody asked me to say, why don't you apply for this? And my first initial reaction is, me? Why? I don't know anything. And then I step in, and I learn so much, and my program grows. Doing service and practicing the principles, doing service helps me to practice these principles in all my affairs, step 12. So I'm really grateful for the program and being able to give back to this wonderful program that saved my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. Do we have someone else that would like to share?
Yeah, my name is Sally.
Hi, Sally.
Hello. For me, service has helped me also be able to give in right-sized ways, and have healthy boundaries. Because one of the things that I learned is in the past sometimes I would do too much or do nothing. And today my relationship with service is to do more what's right size for me. And doing that, I can continue that. For example, at a meeting, I belong to a meeting that sometimes not everybody does step up. But if I commit to, what I try to do is commit to carrying the literature and leading the meeting once a month. So I do my part. But I've learned another part of service is not stepping in just because nobody is doing it if it's too much for me. Thanks.
Thanks, Sally. Do we have someone else who'd like to share?
Hi, this is Sherry. I could share.
Hi, Sherry.
Thank you for your service. I'm very grateful. Well, I know that when I worked the steps in this program, which was from, I think it was like early in 2005 up till I stayed in the program through 2009, and then in 2010 I went into a money and work program and time program because I had to, and I was pretty good still with my food. But at some point I got triggered and, lost my abstinence. But so important, I find, to continually stay on top of my 10th step. Seems like when it comes to the 12th step, I would say, oh, oh no, I'm not perfect enough yet. No, I can't give service. No, I just don't want to put myself out there, was the bottom line. And I think I was just self-centered and selfish. But nowadays, I feel differently about it. I enjoy giving service in a way that I'm shown to give service in life, but also in the program that I'm in. And I have to check back in with OA almost every single day to keep myself straight with food. It's absolutely essential for me. I think it's a core addiction for me. So I'm just grateful that I have been continuing to work on areas of my psyche and my emotions, my thoughts and things. I've been trying to really change my behavior in terms of how I give service, and that I would be willing to. And I see that, if I clutter my room up, if I clutter my house up, it's pushing people away. I've been really looking at that and saying, well, I understand, why I do things like that, but it pushes people away, and I want to be able to change that about myself so that I do let people in, and that I will be willing to get a little closer to them and work with them. Usually it's, if they get too close, I think they're not going to like me anymore. Or, they'll take my inventory, whatever, human fears, really. The value in service is, it's fantastic. It's hard to put a price tag on that. It's pretty valuable. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. Is there someone else that would like to share? This is Cindy again, and I wanted to, I'll just tell a little story on myself since we don't have anyone else stepping up at the moment. I was pretty immersed in just local, my intergroup service, and I gave service at that level for about probably 5 years. Pretty much going to the intergroup meetings, participating in some of the major events we held, and I was really involved in annual convention, and I was really involved in that. It's all different, doing all different jobs on that. And finally, I was the chair of the convention, and boy, did I think I had arrived. I thought I was pretty special. When I was done with that, I made the decision that I had given enough. I had given enough. They'd had, 5 great years of my life. I'd really done all this stuff, and so I was not going to give any more service at that level because it was somebody else's turn. Now, I'm not talking about that I had hogged all the service or anything. I just thought it was time. Well, guess what happened? That's when I went into relapse. When I stopped giving service at the level of program that I need to give service. I need to be very involved, and I'm lucky enough I can do that the way my life sets. But I went into relapse when I decided that I had done enough. And that's sort of what the book reminds us. It's not about stepping back and, I agree we need to keep balance, but we also need to look at what is God asking of me. And any day that I say my 3rd step prayer, I turn my will and my life over to God. That includes what kind of service are you expecting of me today? How can I help another human being today? And if that means, yes, I serve as an officer, or I attend intergroup meetings, or maybe I go to Region, or maybe I go to World Service, which, by the way, if you've never done the World Service Business Conference and you're in a position to give that kind of service, it is one of the most marvelous service experiences I've ever had. Then I feel really, really blessed that I have a higher power who tells me there's more, give more, and there's even more to get back. Because my program is just so much stronger today. Because one of the ways I got back out of relapse was to go back and start giving service again. And so for me, they're pretty much hand in hand. When I finish one type of service, then I just need to look around and say what needs to be done next. So with that, I'll pass. Is there anyone else? We have time for one more share.
Yeah, this is Sally again, and what Cindy shared in her in the sharing was about the maximum helpfulness to others, because I feel like it's more of the attitude that no matter how little or how big of service I'm doing, if I'm having that attitude of being of maximum helpfulness to others, that's truly coming from my higher power. And that's what living my abstinence is all about. Thanks.
Thanks, Sally. Still have time for one more if there's someone else out there with a burning desire.
Hi, this is Barbara, grateful recovering food addict.
Barbara.
Hi, I just had a quick one, which is sometimes I don't tell anybody, but I don't always want to do the next right thing. So sometimes I trick myself into doing the next right thing by having service commitments, like carrying keys to meetings or calling people at certain times or committing to certain service commitments. And so it just is a good way to keep me tied in. Like somebody was saying, you know, I'm not the kind of food addict that needs to be on the outskirts of OA. I need to be in the middle. And service definitely keeps me in the middle. And it has many, many wonderful rewards other than that. But that's one of the ways that I use it, because there are certainly times when if I didn't have that key, I would be staying home. And it gets me there, and it's great, and it gets me out of me. So thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay. I have that it's 5 minutes before the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting. The opinions expressed here today are those of individual OA members and do not represent OA as a whole. If you all would press *6 and unmute, I would appreciate it if you would join me in the third step prayer. Third step prayer. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help, of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Thank you all for coming and participating today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you for your service.